what's the way out? I guess what I'm building up to is this. There is not a democratic way out. There's not you cannot get out through our sacred democracy. There comes a point of critical mass where it's your nation is already invaded. You already have too many foreigners who want things that are not conducive with the welfare, the good of the native population, and you've given 27-year-old liberal white women far too much of a voice and far too much political power, and all they want is trash. And so it's like, okay, well then what we have to do is we need to, it's all about education. We need to educate the voter. And so we need to, sit these young, white women down and give them, lectures from PragerU, Dennis Prager, on the virtues of capitalism and blah, 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 blah. And these foreigners, we need to make it easier for them to assimilate. And no, there comes a certain point where it's not persuasion. It's not compelling. It's not educating. There comes a certain point where you can vote your way into communism. You can't vote your way out. You can vote your way in. You can't vote your way out. There comes a point where it's like, no, he who saves his country violates no law. There comes a certain point where you actually have to cross the Rubicon. You have to say, I'm sorry, but democracy, the problem with democracy is that the people are retarded. And so we cannot fear God and uphold democracy. We have to choose, right? Like I tweeted out today, I said, you have a choice. Save America or empower women to vote. But you can't do both, right? Or you could apply it to abortion. Save babies or allow women to vote. But you can't do both. I mean, women, look, they polled women for the last presidential election in 2024. The number one issue for men was the economy. How can I provide? Number one issue for women was abortion rights. How can I murder my children? You don't appeal to that group.
All right. So there you have it. I want you guys to understand something very, very well. Whether it's America, whether it's the UK, whether it's Australia, Canada, whatever the case might be, we are not going back. At the end of that, you heard him say they polled women and they wanted to know what the women's number one voting issue was. And they said it was abortion. It's been this way for some time. That is all women care about, right? You guys have to understand. I said this in another video. Women were polled and they were asked if something happened, COVID 2.0, zombie apocalypse, whatever, something happens and the worldwide population is dwindling and every woman is told that she has to, have at least 2 babies or 3 babies, right? All the men have to go and handle this issue, but the women have to have like 2 to 3 babies or the human race dies. How do you feel about that? And the majority of these women said they would rather let the human race die than be forced into having children. You guys have to understand something. This guy said, he started his whole argument off by saying, 27-year-old liberal white women have the right to vote, and that's essentially the problem. And I'm here to tell you it's not the problem. It's every woman. It's not just liberal white women. From 18 to death, these women overwhelmingly are voting democratically. And even if when they're not, they're living democratically. You have women who will vote conservative and then live democratically. They'll live like a liberal. So it defeats the vote. This idea that we're going to strip women of their right to vote, we're going to repeal the 19th. Like he said, he who saves his country doesn't break the law. I get what he's saying with that. He says, he's essentially saying if the plan works, then it's not stupid, right? You come for the king, then you can't miss. If you're going to overthrow the government, then essentially you got to win. And if you win, well, who can press charges? So I get what he's saying with that. But the reality of the fact is it's never going to happen. Women outvote men 60-40 in America. And that's in pretty much all elections. It's in the federal elections. I don't know about the state and local, but if you're not voting for the president, you're certainly not voting for city council. Women do not care about America. They don't care about America. They don't care about Australia, Canada, New Zealand. They don't care about any of the countries they live in. They are not the ones on the hook to fight a war if it breaks out. They're not the ones on the hook to defend themselves if the Muslims go crazy, right? They don't care. They don't have any skin in the game. And we don't live in a society where that's a meaningful factor. They get to vote for destruction and you get to repair everything that they destroy. And once again, they're never going to stop voting in the direction that they've been voting. I understand this mindset of, oh man, we got to repeal the 19th Amendment and, we got to sit down with these women and make them understand. You guys need to look at what happened in New York. They voted in Zoran Mondami, or whatever his name is, a Muslim, not so much radical, but he's a Muslim. He's a socialist. He's a communist. And they voted this guy in because he promised them free stuff. Women do not want to become wives. They do not want to be mothers. They don't want to struggle with you. They don't want to work with you. And they don't care that there's Muslim migrants, African migrants, Haitian migrants, Venezuelan migrants. They don't care that there are brown foreigners that are going to sexually assault them and possibly delete them right there in the street. They don't care. They don't care. Not one bit do they care. If it's an issue, you know what they'll do? They'll handle it at the ballot box. They will vote for socialism. They will vote for Palantir. That's that Israeli spy system thing that's supposed to, infiltrate everything and look at everybody. It's that eagle eye type stuff. The Minority Report, predict crimes before they ever even happen type stuff. They're going to vote for socialism. They're going to vote for communism. They'll vote a police state in. They will vote away everyone's freedom so that they don't have to be under the thumb of a man. That is more, they like that more. Women would rather live in Soviet Russia or, North Korea than, have to be forced to marry men and depend on men. Because, no, that feminism has brainwashed them. But this idea that you guys are ever, like, I know a lot of people who think, oh, the only way to fight Islam is with Christianity. So we have to, we got to go back to church. And it certainly sounds good. It sounds fantastic. It sounds amazing. I know a lot of red pillars are talking about, hey, man, we need to start going to church every Sunday without fail. We got to go to church and not miss any services. And the premise behind it is kind of that, whenever you go to a gym, you go to a gym where, people are pumping iron. You see women there. It used to be only men in these sweaty gyms, but now there's women. It used to be that, you go to an MMA gym. People are beating up on each other, wrestling and whatnot. The mats are all sweaty. You look like you go in there and get staph infection, but now there's women in there. Boxing, not so much boxing. Women don't really like boxing, but like CrossFit, right? Wherever men go, women follow. If men say this is cool, women follow because they want male attention. They want male validation, right? And in today's world, they can obviously turn that into content and whatnot. So I've heard a lot of people say, if we start going back to church, they'll start going back to church. And I'm here to tell you that's not going to happen because they can't put it on social media. They can't go there and turn it into a nightclub, right? When they go to the gym, yeah, sure, that's a traditionally male space, but you've seen what they've done to that. They put their boobs in these bras that, put everything on display. They don't, stomach is out, stomach is flat. They put on the pants that lift their butt up, right? Like you can see every crease and every crack and every crevice, camel toe and everything. And what do? They go in there with the full face of makeup and play around with the weights and get men to look at them. It's the same thing in the MMA gym. They go there and pretend like they want to learn Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They roll around with the guy on the mat. Then they take a couple of the guys home, roll around with him on the mattress. Every so often they'll say that they got sexually assaulted. They go to the places where they can get male attention and they can turn that into sexual attention, sexual energy, maybe a husband, maybe that guy can pay some bills, but they're not going to go to the place where they can get a husband and then have to be under his thumb and have to obey him because there's some religious doctrine over top of them. Okay. That's not what they want. They want chaos, and the world devoid of God gives you plenty of chaos. They don't want that, right? You think that you're going to go and have a religious revival and say, Christ is king. And then, your preacher is going to sit up there and talk about how Christ is king and how, this is a Christian nation and it's going to be Jesus versus, Allah or whatever the case might be. Islam versus Christianity. That's not going to happen. If you guys remember back in like 2016, from 2016 to like 2020, the churches couldn't talk about homosexuality. They couldn't talk against the gay agenda or they risked losing their 501c3 status. That's that tax exempt status. So they couldn't go out there and talk about that. It's why they don't talk about Israel in Islam. The Muslims over here in this country and in the UK and all these other countries, they have more activists. They have more lawyers, more Islamic lawyers who know American law, where they'll just say, oh, these Christians are talking bad about us. Go sue them and strip them of their 501c3 status. So your church ain't going to stand up for you, most likely. There's some churches that'll stand up, but most likely it's not going to happen. So this idea that we're going to strip women from their voting rights when they outvote men 60-40 at all levels, it's not going to happen. This idea that it's just liberal white women, no. Look at the conservative women. The conservative women are doing the same thing. They're getting abortions. They're out there at college. They're going to Alabama University and all these southern universities, and they're sleeping with Chad and Tyrone. They're sleeping around. They're sleeping their whole 20s and 30s away. And then they're trying to get married on the back end. They're not any better. Like I said, they'll vote red and live blue. So you're not stopping this. You're not stripping them of their rights. There's nothing you can tell them. And like I said, they don't care about the certain danger that they face because they'll just vote for a police state. So I don't want to sit here and, be a complete doomer, like just complete doom and gloom. I don't want to do that. You guys are welcome to put whatever you want in the comment section in terms of a solution, and I'll look into it, and I'll even make a video. But I personally don't see any hope for America other than men just battening down the hatches. Make as much money as you can, start making you a brotherhood or something like that, going to your MMA gym, make sure you move. If you're white, make sure you move amongst more whites, and make sure you guys start going to church. If you think there's going to be any kind of revolution, it's going to always start with men. You can't worry about women. They're going to vote for the destruction. So the men have to gather on one side, and you guys have to come up with a new doctrine, and then you have to adhere to that like your life depended on it. So if you're going to go back to church and do the whole Christ is King thing, go for it. Because yes, you are facing down the barrel of Islam, and Islam doesn't come to negotiate. They come with the sword. It's a religion that's spread by the sword. So these people aren't coming in peace. So if you think that you can go to a church, you and the guys at your gym, maybe you're in the military, the guys from your unit, right? Maybe you go to college, whatever the case might be. If you think there's a brotherhood to be built at a church, and you're going to go there and you're going to have, like you're going to make it a whole movement, maybe you start vlogging that on social media and you get the ball rolling or something like that, go for it. But understand, women are always going to stand in opposition. And even if they start going to church, they're only there to get attention. They're only there to draw you guys out of the church and back into the chaos because it's fun for them. But the fight is real for you. And they are not on the hook to rebuild anything, right? So like I said, no doom and gloom, but it's doom and gloom. Let me know in the comments if you guys have a better solution, and I'll make a video on it. But I don't see any way out. And I certainly don't see us stripping women of the 19th Amendment. I don't see that happening at any point in time. It is what it is.